Okay, I guess I am not live. This is weird. It's saying I'm live, but I'm not. What the heck is going on? What's going on? I've got people waiting, or at least I've got one person waiting. At least that's what it says. Alright, let me try refreshing the page just so I can see what it is that's actually going on here. Oh, hey, look, it does say that I'm live. Sweet! Alright, now I see me. Alright, well, I guess I'll do the intro over again unless I was already live, but welcome to the first inaugural Super Koopa At Night live stream. I've done plenty of live streams in the past. I haven't done this in a while. I've had a lot of technical issues. My computer is old, and yeah, so I thought for a starting topic tonight, and first of all, I hope everybody is doing fantastic. I can't say that I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing okay, but as an overall, I could be better. I found out that I have another ear infection, and that's just kind of a pain or some sort of irritation, and I had to go to the doctors to get that checked out. But you don't want to hear about any of that. So I figure we'll open up with talking about Charles Martinet. I keep pronouncing his name wrong, and I don't know why I keep doing it. I just keep pronouncing his name wrong. But it says he'll no longer be the voice of Mario. And I made a video about this, and according to Nintendo Life, he's not going to be in Super Mario Bros. Wonder. He's already been replaced. This is by Elena H. I can't pronounce her last name. In a statement made to both IGN and Eurogamer, Nintendo has confirmed that Charles Martinet is not in Super Mario Bros. Wonder. That means both Mario and Luigi are voiced by a brand new voice actor in the upcoming platformer. Nintendo told both publications that, quote, while Charles is not involved in the game, we are excited to honor his legacy and contributions, including looking ahead to what he'll be doing as a Mario ambassador. Character voice actors for Mario and or Luigi in Super Mario Bros. Wonder will be credited in the game credits, so please wait for the game to be released. I have a feeling they're going to debut who it is when they do that video, when Charles and Shigeru Miyamoto do that video that they're planning on doing. But I talked about this in my video, but I didn't really talk about Charles himself. I mostly talked about Nintendo and my concern about all of the changes that Nintendo's been making. I really am going to miss Charles. I'm going to miss his voice. I mean, he was the voice of Mario since even before Mario 64. A lot of people have him credited his first major voice role as Mario in Super Mario 64, but that's just not true. He started in 1994 in a game called, I believe it was Super Mario. It wasn't even called Super Mario. It was a Mario spin-off game where you played mini games. Pro Jared actually played it. You played games like Go Fish, and I think it was like an educational Mario game. And he was fully voice acted in that. Like, he had full lines. So a lot of people just didn't know that game existed. It was very obscure, but that was his first time. So he's been voicing for almost 29 years, I would say. About 29 years, almost 30. And I'm 31, so he's been voicing Mario for 2 years less than I've been alive. That is insane. But he's going to be, I mean, the article says, Nintendo made the announcement on Twitter today confirming, and this was 3 days ago, that the iconic voice actor will be stepping back from recording character voices from our games. But don't worry, as Martinet won't be stepping away from Mario entirely. Nintendo has created a brand new role for the actor, Mario Ambassador. Only Nintendo could come up with something called Mario Ambassador and make it sound awesome. This brand new role will likely involve promoting the Plumbers merchandise, movies, and of course the game, so we couldn't think of a better person to don the cap. But we'd be lying if we said that we weren't heartbroken. Martinet is Mario to millions across the world, and we'll miss his voice massively. Oh yes, we absolutely will. So, from Nintendo Life and the community, we want to say a big thank you to the voice of a generation, absolutely, for shaping an iconic Mario character and helping us to fall in love with the plumber, and Wario too, of course. We don't know who will be replacing Martinet as the voice actor in the Mario games, but we wish them the best of luck. This means that Martinet's last role will likely be Super Mario Bros. Wonder. which they updated it. It is not. His last was Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope or something like that, which is a little disappointing. You would hope it was a mainline game, but I mean, it is what it is. But man, nearly 30 years with this guy. I mean, I first heard his voice in 64, like most people, and I first played 64, oh geez, probably around 99 or 2000, somewhere around there. And I still have my original copy of 64. I have 3 technical copies of 64, maybe 4. And, I mean, it's massive. He created the standard of which everybody else is going to go off of. No matter who they pick, they're going to be emulating Charles. And from what I've heard from the Super Mario Bros. Wonder clips, it's pretty spot on. And same for the new WarioWare that's coming out. The Wario is pretty spot on as well. So, I mean, he's going to go on to be an ambassador. He's going to travel. He's going to do events. That's going to be a lot of fun. So people will still be able to get his autograph, I'm sure, and get to meet him. I mean, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. Who knows how much longer he's going to do that. But, I mean, he's almost 70. So you got to figure that he is slowing down. Now, there's a lot of voice actors in their 70s and 80s. Mel Blanc went till, I believe, his 80s, and then he unfortunately passed away. And this guy is the Mel Blanc of the Mario universe. There's no question about that in my mind. But Mel Blanc went till at least 80, and he was fantastic. I mean, you would think he was irreplaceable, but he had already had people who he was working with, because his health was declining, I believe, if I'm remembering the story correctly. And so Warner Brothers was prepared. And nowadays they have Eric Bauza. Eric Bauza, I believe that's his last name is Bauza, or Booza, or something. I don't know how to pronounce it. Eric B. Whenever I can't say somebody's last name, I just say the first initial, because I think it's a whole lot easier. But he's doing a fantastic job with Looney Tunes. So this sort of thing happens. It happens in gaming. It happens in cartoons. You get voice actors and actresses who just can't do it anymore. Either something tragic happens, like they die, or they decide they want to retire, and they just get swapped out. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it really doesn't. What's going to be hard is, with the King of the Hill reboot, the death of Johnny Hardwick is Dale. Because we no longer have Dale. We no longer have Lucky. We no longer have Luann. So there's 3 critical characters that we no longer have. And so either the series is going to have to adjust to address this, or they're going to have to scrap it. I have a feeling they're not going to scrap the series. I know people want them to, but I think they're contractually obligated to finish at least 1 season, or at least 2 seasons, whatever they got contracted for. So it's just going to be an adjustment. It's going to be a real big adjustment. So thank you, Charles Martinet. He was the voice of many of our childhoods. Absolutely fantastic. So let's look over on Bounding into Comics. I've been avoiding Bounding into Comics all day because I haven't really wanted to look up any entertainment headlines until I streamed. So we'll go ahead and see what they've got. The first one is, Embracer Group announces Magic the Gathering's Race Swap. The Lord of the Rings card set helped grow entertainment services segment 70%. Bullcrap. I do not believe this. For recently touted the franchise's power, claiming that much of its growth in its entertainment services division was due to the Lord of the Rings. The company specifically highlighted Magic the Gathering's The Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth card set as one of the primary drivers of sales. This is with race-swapped Aragon, which is one of the most offensive pieces of garbage I have ever seen. Aragon is not black. He never was black. He has no reason to be black. If you want a black character within Lord of the Rings, create one. If you've got the rights to the series, create one and make it good. Don't just keep swapping races. This is terrible. Back in June, Embracer Group revealed that they purchased Middle-earth Enterprises for a steal. Quote, the most significant acquisition of these acquisitions is the acquisition of the Middle-earth Enterprises, which owns a vast intellectual property catalog and worldwide rights to motion pictures, video games, board games, merchandising, theme parks, and stage productions relating to the iconic fantasy literary works, The Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, as well as matching rights in other Middle-earth related literary works authorized by the Tolkien estate and HarperCollins, which have yet to be explored. They then shared quote, the consideration for Middle-earth Enterprises acquisition sums up to SEK 4,265 million. Where SEK 2,901 million has impacted the cash flow, unquote. 4.0 265 billion Swedish krona roughly converts to around $398.8 million. Wow. I thought Lord of the Rings would honestly go for more than $300 million. I thought it would go for 500 to a billion. I really did. To highlight how shockingly low that number is, Variety claims that, quote, estimates at the time project the rights were worth up to $2 billion. That's exactly what I thought. I thought that this franchise would be worth at least $2 billion. At least $1 billion. After the Peter Jackson movies, it skyrocketed. They made so much money off of the surrounding merchandise, reprints of the books, spin-offs in book form, games, comics, toys, all of that. I mean, it's worth it's the Star Wars of the early 2000s. Not only did they purchase Middle-earth Enterprises for a steal, but Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings is already raking in the dough for the company. In their most recent earnings report, Embracer Group reported in the quarter, the entertainment and services segment also made a notable contribution, growing by 70% organically with a 15% adjusted EBIT margin. The high margin is primarily explained by a strong contribution from Middle-earth Enterprises, driven by strong licensing revenue for The Lord of the Rings. This is a massive, massive franchise, and they really were able to get it for a steal. I'm shocked. And I don't know if they have all the rights. I'm pretty sure Warner still holds the primary film rights, so this is interesting. Quote, the performance of Middle-earth Enterprises is well ahead of the business plan developed at the time of acquisition a year ago. Embracer Group continued, it is encouraging to see many exciting external projects based on this incredible IP, including the recently successful released Magic the Gathering trading card game. It was not successful. I'm going to stop right there. It was not that successful. It was highly criticized. Now, if people ran out and bought it because of the rarity, because of whatever, sure. I wouldn't call that a success. I mean, again, what they did to Aragorn, people know what Aragorn looks like, and they changed it for virtue signaling, which is disgusting in my mind. I'm so tired of this. It drives me insane. Alright, where did I leave off? The upcoming PC/console survival crafting game, The Lord of the Rings Return to Moria, as well as many other exciting new products that will grow the IP further. So I didn't know about this. There's apparently a game coming out. That I didn't know. This growth from The Lord of the Rings clearly shows there's a demand for the property. However, it also might be a cause for concern for many fans of Lord of the Rings, as Embracer Group made it abundantly clear they plan to exploit the franchise. Yeah, that's never really something you want to hear. Back in June, as the company announced mass layoffs and a restructuring, the company's interim chief operations officer, Matthew Karch, stated, I can't pronounce anybody's last name anymore, and I don't know why. I've been with the company for many, many years, and I've seen vast ways in which I think we can improve that I consider to be low-hanging fruit. I'm excited to get these plans implemented and show some really rapid and visible results. That is a horrifying statement. When it comes to something with a legacy as big as Lord of the Rings, the last thing you want to hear is, we are going to make improvements. It doesn't need improvements. It's a great franchise. Peter Jackson was able to elevate the franchise. Yes, he altered some things here and there, but he stayed pretty true to Tolkien's original vision without being offensively different. Back in June, as the company announced mass layoffs and a restructuring, the company's interim chief operations... Okay, I already read that. I'm sorry. And for that purpose, we are initiating multiple actions that are going to strengthen our cash flow generation, and that will leverage our portfolio of IP, which I consider to be some of the best in the world, to create a stronger company. Later, during the Q&A portion of the press conference, Karch was asked about the potential growth opportunities he saw for the company. He answered, quote, with some more centralization, and I'm obviously not implying we are moving from one model to another, but we are going to incorporate elements of consolidation and centralization into certain aspects of our business. Yeah, that's some PR spin if there ever was any. We are going to have a much better picture of the teams that are coming available, and we are going to have a much better data support for the product selection and to create product which is going to ultimately achieve better results than some of our past products have. So I have a high degree of confidence that this entire process is going to be easily to translate into better product, blah, 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 blah. It's basically just, we expect growth with this IP that we've got. He then touched on Lord of the Rings and, quote, and that helps to leverage the IP that we own within our organization. I mean, we own Lord of the Rings. We know we need to be exploiting Lord of the Rings in a very significant fashion and turning it into one of the biggest gaming franchises in the world. Lord of the Rings is a multimedia franchise. It's not just a gaming franchise. Why would you say that? Why would you elevate it as just a gaming franchise when it is primarily a multimedia franchise? That doesn't make any sense to me. I understand making new, fun Lord of the Rings games, but that statement is very baffling to me. We know we need to be exploiting Lord of the Rings in a very significant fashion, turning it into one of the biggest gaming franchises in the world, and that's obviously something that we are going to be doing. That's a much better use of resources than some of the other projects that some of our teams have been working on. Working together, we have those opportunities, and we are super excited to put that work relatively quickly, he concluded. Some of these Magic cards are so bad. I mean, I gotta go back to Aragorn for a minute. I don't know if I'm gonna finish the rest of this article. That's not Aragorn. It's just not. It's not Aragorn. It's a fan fiction Aragorn-inspired character, but it's not Aragorn. It's horribly maligned, and it reeks of political agenda where there doesn't need to be one. People know what Aragorn looks like. They race swapped him for no reason. There's no defense of that. There really isn't. But yet they're touting it as a success because they acquired it, and they've done a whole bunch of, now we have a whole bunch of black elves, and which... That's what they've been doing. It's like, hey, you know what? Black people need fantasy too. But do we? I mean, we've got our own fantasy. People make fantasies with black people in them, but they're trying to take Lord of the Rings and make it about race, make it about gender, make it about all of these modern issues that in 50 years, I guarantee you nobody is going to care about. So it's going to date these characters. And we'll have to look back on this era and we'll say, wow, okay, these people only cared about race and gender. Why did they do that? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, this is just... Why? You're taking legacy characters and a franchise that was primarily set in a fantasy, mostly white environment, not because of racism, but because of the author and his point of origin. It's like if I, a black man, made something based on my point of origin and it was just completely black, you know? If somebody did that, I would feel... I mean, what do you even say to this, honestly? What can I say that hasn't already been said? So that's Lord of the Rings. They think it was a success. I would highly disagree. That franchise is also going to go down the toilet. All right, let's see what other articles do we have here. Rebel Moon producer Deborah Snyder on Sofia Botella's character. It's so important to us that it was believable that she was this amazing warrior. I don't really know much about Rebel Moon, nor do I care. Hercules actor Kevin Sorbo says his agent and manager were unwilling to work with him because of his political leanings and Christian religious views. Okay, this is interesting. I really like Kevin Sorbo. I followed a lot of his tweets or X's or whatever. Let's see. Actor Kevin Sorbo, perhaps best known for his role in Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, as the titular demigod, says that Hollywood canceled him because of his political leanings as well as his religious beliefs. Whilst promoting his upcoming film Miracle in East Texas, Sorbo and his wife Sam spoke to Fox News Digital, wherein the openly conservative actor opened up about the struggles he faced for expressing his political views. It was sad to me. You know, my manager and agent for so many years said that we can't get your jobs anymore. Work with you because of you being a Christian, being a conservative, the Hercules actor lamented. I mean, that's pathetic. So we're going to be open to all sorts of people thanks to DEI, but we're not going to be open to openly avowed Christians. Okay. He further recalled, and I almost had to laugh at that because it's an industry that screams for tolerance. Exactly. And yet it's a one-way street. It screams for freedom of speech, but Hollywood's a one-way street as well. Exactly. And that's just too bad, you know? But I love the industry. I love the movies and TV. Sorbo went on to admit. It was really weird. I mean, here's the thing. We have such a huge divide in our country right now. It's perpetuated by mainstream media, perpetuated by movies, TV. The actor confessed, I don't harbor that kind of anger and hatred towards people. I have a different point of view. He's a very humble guy. As the interviewer went on, Sorbo recalled the near-death experience he had in 1997 caused by an undetected aneurysm that made him suffer a series of strokes. The actor learned from this experience, explaining that he found strength in God. It happened in season 5 on Hercules, the actor said. I had an aneurysm that was way up here right next to the neck, and unfortunately when it opened up, it sent a few clots to the brain, and I suffered a series of strokes, and it took me 3 years to fully recover from it. Wow! I did not know this. Sorbo recounted, it took me longer than 4 months to really learn how to walk and balance again properly. I mean, it was a tough road, but I thank my faith in God. I thank this tough woman here, gesturing to Sam, that every time I got down on myself, she said, Kevin, it happened. What are you going to do about it? But it put me on a road that I never thought I'd be on, which is the talk circuit, the actor declared. And I do so proudly, about 12 to 15 speaking events a year and covering everything from pro-life to Christian education to medical, whatever it may be. He's a good guy. He's a real good guy. I really like Kevin Sorbo. Even Hollywood motivational. I mean, people want me to talk about the culture war between what Hollywood is doing and the kinds of movies I'm doing because obviously we're doing quite different movies, Sorbo explained, adding, I don't think I'm doing something that different. I'm doing the movies Hollywood used to. Given his stances on politics and religion, Sorbo is very familiar with cancel culture. In February of 2021, the Hercules actor took to social media to denounce Facebook for deleting his week-old account. Sorbo elaborated on Facebook censoring during an interview with Fox Business, wherein the conservative actor revealed that the social media platform had been, quote, shadow banning him for a while prior to the suspension. They've been shadow banning me for a good year now, the actor declared. I have over 500,000 followers, and they only allowed me to see up to 10,000 at a time when I post now. He elaborated, and every time they've come back to me and said, look, we've got to get rid of this because we think this is their version of fake news, and I take it down, though I could argue with that, but I don't want to lose my page. But this time around, they just took me down, he went on. There was no warnings or anything like that. I've been more than happy to take down whatever offensive posts that Facebook deemed that I should not be posting, so I questioned their statement, and they gave me some warning. Sorbo is not the only Hollywood actor who has been canceled by Hollywood for staying true to his Christian beliefs. In January of 2020, Captain America: The First Avenger and Yellowstone actor Neil McDowell revealed that his refusal to perform candid scenes led to Hollywood blacklisting him in 2010. I won't mention the Lord's name in vain, and then I won't kiss another woman, McDowell said during an interview with Fox News. I've heard he's a pretty solid believer as well. I had only seen him in Arrow, where he played... was it Malcolm Merlin? No, Malcolm Merlin was the other guy. Who did he play? He played... Damien Dark, that's who he played. Quote, sex scenes aren't in it for me, and I think, gosh, there's enough sex scenes out there, and me being in my 50s, I'm not sure if anybody wants to see me doing that stuff anyway, but it's a comfort level. I'm not very comfortable doing that. We've known for years that Hollywood has a way of trying to coax people into sex scenes and trying to say, you'll never work in this town again unless you do this, the whole casting couch, Harvey Weinstein, all that junk. This is just really more of that, and blatantly so. Being ostracized by Hollywood led McDonough to launch his own faith-based film company, the McD Company, which secured the rights to Brass and Unity, the memoir of former artillery gunnery Kelsey Sharon earlier this year. What do you make of Sorbo's revelation that both his politics and Christian faith led him to being blackballed? Well, I'm not at all surprised. I think that this is the type of thing that for Christians we are told to expect this. We are told to expect discrimination, and it's just ironic that, again, as Sorbo said, Hollywood is so about diversity and equity and inclusion, and yet when somebody is openly avowed Christian or conservative or right-wing or whatever isn't the flavor of the month or isn't a part of the in club, they automatically get shut out. And that to me is very unfortunate, because a lot of these people are good actors. Kevin Sorbo is a fantastic actor. So is Neil McD. They're fantastic. They love what they do, but because they hold views that aren't popular or are considered discriminatory, then they're kicked out of Hollywood, and it's really sad. I hope that this culture war ends at some point. I hope that we just learn that, okay, you've got this group of people who believe this, you've got this group of people who believe that, and regardless of what either side believes, we need to just get along as best as we can and recognize that not everything is going to be a unity moment. Because that's how things used to be. It used to be people held all sorts of wild and crazy different beliefs. They held different political views. They held all sorts of opinions. And they just got along and worked together. Maybe they didn't always get along behind the scenes, but when it came to producing media, they were willing to work together. Nobody was trying to cancel each other. Nobody was trying to oust each other as terrible. This just wasn't happening until the culture war hit, really. Not in any sort of major way. All right, so this is an interesting article. Disney CEO Bob Iger says company working to improve the quality of their films by reducing both the number of titles we released and the cost per title. I think something like this has been mentioned before. Went way too fast there. In an extension of the company's previously announced plans for Marvel Studios, Disney CEO Bob Iger has confirmed that the entire House of Mouse will be attempting to improve the quality of their output by cutting back on both the number of titles we release and their individual cost. Iger provided this insight into Disney's latest attempt to right their sinking box office during the company's August 9th Q3 2023 earnings call. I listened to that earnings call on, I believe it was Valiant Renegade who was hosting it, and boy, was it an absolute trip. I mean, they were touting things that weren't really major achievements. They were making it sound like they had all these sorts of gains. It was crazy. It was nuts. And he just spent the entire time trying to say, yeah, the Disney company's doing fine. There's nothing wrong with the Walt Disney Company. You know, we are going forward with most of our plans. And the one thing that he said was, well, we're a little disappointed in our overall performance. You know, we're not crazy about how some of our films have performed, but we're confident that going into 2024, things will be great. Stepping up to the mic following a brief introduction from Disney Investor Relations Senior VP Alexia Q, the CEO began his time by noting how, quote, in the 8 months since I returned, we've undertaken an unprecedented transformation at Disney, and this quarter's earnings reflect some of what we have accomplished. If by unprecedented transformation he means absolute failure and being in the red, yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate. In fact, let's look at the Walt Disney Company stocks here and see if things are still in the red. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're not looking good. They are not looking good at all. Everything is red across the board. And these are all different major corporations: Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Microsoft. Most of them are in the red, but Disney has just been trending as far downward as it can possibly get. It's just not looking good whatsoever. I don't know what they're going to do. They're saying, is this saying they're approaching a 9-year low? Disney shares close at 9-year. Wow. Unbelievable. Back to the article. We aggressively reduced costs across the enterprise, and we're on track to exceed our initial goal of $5.5 billion in savings. So they're concerned about savings now for some reason? What? I thought you want earnings. He added, I'm pleased with how much we've gotten done in such a short period of time, but I also know we have a lot more to do. Using this update as a jumping-off point, the Disney boss then turned to elaborate on the state of our company and the transformative work we are still undertaking. As I've said before, our progress will not always be linear, explained Iger, but despite near-term headwinds, I'm incredibly confident in Disney's long-term trajectory because of the work we've done, the team we have in place, and because of Disney's core intellectual property foundation. Moving forward, I believe the 3 businesses will drive the greatest growth and value creation over the next 5 years, he asserted. These are our film studios, our park businesses, and streaming, all of which are inextricably linked to our brands and franchises. The streaming part is really not working out very well. Disney Plus has lost, close to 1 billion subscribers? It's lost a couple million subscribers. It's not... They want to convert everything and then just abandon the linear TV model, whereas over at Warner Brothers, what they're doing is they're doing a hybrid model where they've got stuff on Max, but they've also got a whole bunch of stuff premiering and still airing on television. And I believe Paramount is starting to do a similar thing over there as well. But Disney has just completely abandoned their linear platforms in favor of going directly to streaming. And that's not working because a lot of people don't like Disney Plus. I've been scouring all sorts of different messages and Facebook posts and different things, and people keep saying the same thing. They don't like Disney Plus. They don't want to pay for Disney Plus anymore. It's getting too expensive. It's not worth the money. There's not enough there. So it's not good. None of it is very good at all. In terms of the company's film-related efforts, Iger revealed that across every one of their various studios, including Pixar, Lucasfilm, and the aforementioned Marvel Studios, the company's various studios were focused on improving the quality of our films and on better economics, not just reducing the number of titles we release, but also the cost per title. And we're maximizing the full impact of our titles by embracing the multiple distribution windows at our disposal, enabling consumers to access their content in multiple ways. Kind of a lot of blah, blah, blah there. For example, Avatar: The Way of Water, which is now the third highest grossing film of all time, is also on track to be the biggest ever electronic home video release for Disney domestically. Certain other titles will be sold in the download to own window as well, Iger continued. So they're not going to put everything on download to own, which is very confusing. Why wouldn't they put the majority of their things on download to own? Because I think most storefronts have that. There's two things that I think people really want. They want physical media and they want download to own. If it's just streaming all the time, people can't justify that monthly cost because there's a lot of media that they want to save, they want to rewatch in the future, they don't always have a good internet connection. I'm starting to get a whole bunch of Blu-rays. You know, I don't want to be constantly online always because I need that bandwidth for other things like streaming and gaming and all these sorts of things. Certain other titles will be... Okay. By focusing on big franchises and tentpole films, we're able to generate the interest in our existing library. For example, we're seeing tremendous engagement on Disney Plus. No, that's kind of a lie. With the previous Guardians of the Galaxy films, the original Avatar, and our first 4 Indiana Jones movies. Our first 4? Really, Bob? Those were Spielberg and Paramount. Spielberg, Lucas, and Paramount made the first 4 Indiana Jones films. You guys made the 5th one, which absolutely bombed. You had nothing to do with the creation of the first 4 films. You own them, but you didn't make them. Come on now. And the 4th film was considered to be pretty bad, so I don't know that I would want to be taking ownership of that in particular. But the value of our Disney Entertainment Studios and the reason this will be a key growth business for us extends far beyond our library and new releases. Following a brief note that both the Disney parks and cruise lines have shown significant upticks in attendance in recent months. Actually, WDW Pro and several others have noted that the parks are actually in significant decline despite, his statement here. They have seen a massive decline in attendance. A lot of people just won't go anymore. And a lot of the word of mouth is, I don't know about the cruise lines, but as far as the Disney parks are concerned, it's just a chore. With Genie Plus having to be on their phone all the time, they have to plan everything out. They just... they have to plan where they're going to go, when they're going to go. They can't just free roam the parks like you used to be able to. If they've got a family, they've got to plan everything because they got to get in line for the right rides and make sure they're on time for the right attractions. You can't just show up anymore. It's just a pain, so people don't do it. And there was a lot of footage shown of the Magic Kingdom almost near empty. So this is just sort of PR spin that they're doing to try and keep investors excited about the future, which they have to do. They're a business. You have to present yourself as doing well. But the investors, if they look at the numbers, they're seeing the opposite. So, but he wasn't really pressed during the earnings call on any of these points. So that was interesting. Iger ultimately asserted that all of this happened while we were still determining the right strategies for pricing, marketing, content, and specific international market investments. However, since my return, we've reset the whole business around economics designed to deliver significant sustained profitability, said the executive. We are prioritizing the strength of our brands and franchises. We're rationalizing the volume of content we make, what we spend, and what markets we'll invest in. And there's a clip from Kingdom Hearts 3, which I don't know how that's going to go. As noted above, Iger's latest promise to scale back Disney's output echoes their previously confirmed strategy for saving the Marvel Cinematic Universe from its current death spiral. Speaking to investors during the company's Q1 2023 earnings call, Iger asserted that while Disney would be moving forward by seeking to, quote, lean more into our franchises, our core franchises, and our brands, unquote, these franchises would also be undergoing a round of curation. Quote, we have to be better at curating the Disney and the Pixar and the Marvel and the Star Wars of it all, Iger told attendees. And of course, reduce costs on everything that we make. Well, I mean, that pretty much goes without saying. I mean, part of Disney's problem is that they're spending so much money and they're seeing very little return on investment. They're spending multi-million dollars on Marvel, on Star Wars, on Pixar, and they're not seeing massive returns on investment. Now, there's buzz going around that Elemental is starting to make back its money and starting to do really well, and there's articles being written saying it's defying the it was a bust narrative, but nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about Elemental. At best, people said it's fine, but it's just not. People don't care. The last couple of Pixar movies have been below average, including Toy Story 4. They're nowhere near where they were when they were releasing films like Finding Nemo and The Incredibles and Ratatouille and all of those. They're nowhere near that. And they've gotten rid of most of the talent, including Lasseter, because apparently he was a little bit too huggy, and apparently that's a crime. So they basically shot themselves in the foot with that one. And of course, reduce costs on everything that we make. While we are extremely proud of what's on the screen, it's gotten to a point where it's extraordinarily expensive. We want all the quality. We want the quality on the screen, but we have to look at what they cost us, he added. It wouldn't cost so much if he didn't acquire both Lucasfilm and 20th Century Fox. He when he was originally tenured as CEO, he acquired all of these franchises. He acquired Marvel, he acquired Star Wars, he acquired 20th Century Fox, and all of that has put them in the hole. And they've done nothing with 20th Century Fox. They've turned it into, I believe, 20th Century Studios. They produce nothing of value for that particular studio. It's just been an absolute mess. And I don't understand that strategy. It's like, yeah, that looks good to investors, but if you're not doing anything with those acquired properties that are generating revenue, then what are you doing? Honestly, what are you doing? And they're overspending. They're overspending on their productions, where you're starting to see a lot of smaller budget films succeed. Stuff like The Sound of Freedom, and Barbie wasn't exactly small budget. That was bigger budget, but it's based on a brand that people care about. And in the first half of the movie anyway, it was faithful to what that brand was. In the second half, that's a discussion for another day. But they're overspending on their films. They're losing more than they're gaining because people aren't going to the movies. That's why they're trying to pivot to the streaming model, thinking that more people are going to just sit at home and watch movies, and that's the future. That's not necessarily true. People want to watch movies on a big screen. I like watching movies at the theater on a big screen. I like getting the popcorn and the drink and nearly going into debt while doing so. I enjoy that whole experience, but I don't enjoy it if the movie sucks. And more often than not, when it comes to Disney properties, their movies just aren't very good. They're meh at best. Iger would later reiterate the company's plans during a July interview with CNBC's David Faber. Asked by Faber, quote, "Is there a problem, though, at Disney Animation? Is the loss of John Lasseter years ago been a blow that you haven't been able to recover from?" I didn't realize he asked him this. The CEO would reply, "Well, first of all, the studio and its movies assets are number one at the global box office so far. Is that even true? That can't be true. They've lost so much money. There's no way that that's true." So at that point, he's just trying to save his butt with investors once again. There's no way that that's true. Why would investors believe this? That said, we are extremely realistic, and I'm very objective about that business. There have been some disappointments, he would then admit. We would have liked some of our more recent releases to have performed better. It's reflective, not a problem from a personal perspective, but I think in our zeal basically grow our content significantly to serve mostly our streaming offerings, we ended up taxing our people way beyond in terms of their time and their focus, way beyond what they had been. Pointing to Marvel Studios specifically, Iger then posited, "Marvel's got a great example of that. They have not been in the TV business at any significant level. Not only did they increase their movie output, but they ended up making a number of television series, and frankly, it diluted focus and attention. And I think you are seeing that that is more the cause than anything else." People don't like the Marvel TV shows. They don't like the Marvel TV shows. A lot of people didn't like Loki or WandaVision, or they really didn't like Secret Invasion. She-Hulk was an absolute abomination, no pun intended. Those shows did not do well at all. They were terrible. They were absolutely terrible. So no, people didn't like those, but, oh, we output so many of them. Isn't that good? Isn't that great? He's purely a numbers guy, but he's not looking at the right numbers. He's not looking at the audience feedback. I find it funny that in the 21st century, we have got so many ways to judge the metrics of audience feedback, and yet these companies don't pay anybody to really look at that. Either that or they pay people to lie about the level of audience feedback that they receive. And it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because, again, you can go and create a Facebook page called Disney Metrics or Disney Polls and have people, give you accurate information as opposed to what they want. You can make a poll saying, do you want us to remake Snow White? Do you want us to remake 101 Dalmatians or Lion King or Mary Poppins or whatever? And you can get an accurate gauge of what it is that people want. But yet Disney and these other companies just won't do that. They use their social media pages for basic promotion, and that's about it. And then they don't even get the feedback from that. It's baffling. And yet they spend who knows how much trying to gather all of these different metrics and do all of these test screenings and all of this sort of thing. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It really doesn't. Later asked by Faber if these factors would prompt him to pull back on the amount of Marvel projects being released, Iger bluntly confirmed, yes, you pull back not just to focus, but it's also part of our containment initiative, spending less on what we make and making less. As of writing, it is unknown whether Disney's scaling back will involve the cancellation of any of their previously confirmed project. To this end, while it is unlikely that any currently in production films such as Deadpool 3, Thunderbolts, and Captain America Brave New World. They're making another Captain America? Really? I didn't know that. Would face the chopping block, it not out of the realm of possibility that those haven't yet made it past the drawing board. I think they meant it's right here. See, practically their entire Star Wars slate could end up being canceled as part of this latest initiative. Also because of the strikes, because the strikes have had a profound impact on how much they're producing, but this is basically just reiterating a whole lot of what we already knew as far as, or what I would assume most people know about Bob Iger's stance and how he's just, yeah, we're doing great. We're not doing as great as we would like, but we're doing great. He has to always constantly have a smile on his face, be saying something positive, and this is just corporate PR spin. This isn't authentic, being honest about the fact that the company is basically in the red in most of its divisions. Again, we look over here, and Disney shares close at a 9-year low. We see the stock's trending downward and just further and further downward. It's not good. Why would you invest in Disney at this point? They don't have a bright future. Reimagine Tomorrow was one of the worst initiatives that the company ever came up with, because the idea was we're going to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion and not on good storytelling. And as a result of that, we have seen Star Wars, we have seen Indiana Jones, Willow, several of the Marvel franchises and several of Disney's own in-house franchises suffer as a result. We've seen things like the Proud Family, the whole slaves built this country speech was absolutely abominable. The old Proud Family used to be fun. It featured a black family and it dealt with some black issues at times, but it was for everybody. It was something that everybody could enjoy. This new version is trying to push a more modernized narrative, and it hurt the product, and it became a meme, and people started arguing about it online. It's just, Disney is an absolute mess. This was a company, I remember growing up, watching multiple Disney films when they came out in theaters. Usually live action and animated, primarily animated, but throughout the 90s and into the early 2000s, there was just a whole bunch of really solid live-action Disney family films. And I made a video yesterday talking about how the era of the family film has just completely disappeared. It's no longer a major thing. Live-action family films, animated family films, it feels like after 2006, 2007, that well just completely dried up. There's just no more major family films available. And if there are, they're usually bumped to streaming. And it's not that there's no company making them. I want to be very clear about that. But the major Hollywood studios seem to have abandoned that core model, and it's been dumped to, free streaming services or some of the lesser streaming services. It's no longer theatrical like it once used to be. Movies like The Big Green, Cool Runnings, Snow Dogs, that sort of thing. Snow Dogs was a whole lot of fun with Cuba Gooding Jr. That was a fantastic movie. That was a fun, heartfelt family movie that a lot of people could get behind, and they just don't make them like that anymore. Disney has no desire to make movies like that anymore, and it's just really, really sad. It's really sad. And I, for one, I don't know what this company's going to do to get out of its hole. I genuinely don't. But I'm hoping that they do something positive, because a lot of people want something to pass down to their kids that's meaningful. And obviously people can do this with old Disney. You know, obviously people can look at old Disney and they can share old Disney, and it's great. But you can't do that in the modern day, because modern Disney is all concerned about diversity, equity, and inclusion thanks to Reimagine Tomorrow. They have a whole DEI department. You hear all sorts of stories of people who have been fired because of their DEI department. They've been fired because they expressed certain beliefs, much like Kevin Sorbo. They're not allowed to be conservative or right-wing or Christian or anything of that nature. So there's no real actual intersectionality taking place. They're just people who believe in our cause and no one else. And that's terrible for Disney. That's not what the Disney Corporation used to be. The Disney Corporation used to be dedicated to family fun and entertainment and making the best family fun and entertainment they possibly could. They are no longer dedicated to that cause. They are instead dedicated to, we want everybody to feel seen. Well, guess what? Not everybody is going to feel seen the way that you feel they should be seen. Okay? Not everybody is going to feel like they're going to be seen the way that you're pushing. You know, not everybody is going to go, oh, look, there's a black character on screen. I feel seen. That doesn't happen with me. This whole thing with Aragorn, I don't feel seen with this. I feel insulted because I know who the character of Aragorn is, and I know what he stands for, and I know how he's described. And they're just flipping the script because they feel they can. And then you're told if you argue about this, you're a racist, you're a sexist, you're a whatever. And it's just so stupid. They're gaslighting fans of Lord of the Rings. And I'm not a major Lord of the Rings fan. I watched the movies way too much growing up. Way too much. My father watched them all the time. They were some of his favorite movies. He would watch them, I think, almost every weekend. There was one point where, when I was growing up, we had a large basement wall. On the outside of our basement, there was a large wall. And so what Dad did was he put up a bedroom sheet and he set up some speakers and DVD player and a projector. And we watched Lord of the Rings in the backyard. To the point where one of our neighbors came out and he said, "What's going on?" It was crazy. But, I mean, Lord of the Rings was, and I've seen the movies so many times, I really can't enjoy them much anymore except for in clip form because they're just so long. But I have nothing but respect for what Lord of the Rings was. And this company is now saying, oh, we want to change things. You know, we want to make things more diverse, more equitable, more inclusive. And on the surface, you're going, okay, that's fine. You know, there's no problem with that sort of thing. Until you realize how they implement it, where they just race swap Aragorn, which is not only lazy, but it's just disingenuous. And then they gaslight people about it. So these companies really need to knock this off. They need to get out of the culture war, and they need to just start producing things that everybody can enjoy again. And it's really just tiring. It's honestly just exhausting at every front. Every front. All right, so we got some news on, it looks like, Elder Scrolls 6. Again, I haven't read a lot of these articles yet. Bethesda boss Todd Howard says he wants Elder Scrolls 6 to fill that role of the ultimate fantasy world simulator. What's interesting about Elder Scrolls 6 is we've got, what's it called? We've got that one coming from Microsoft. That new fantasy, Avowed? I think it's Avowed. We've got Avowed coming out, and Avowed looks amazing. I don't think it's open world, but it looks amazing as far as fantasy is concerned. Bethesda Game Studios game director and executive producer Todd Howard recently shared what he wants to achieve with the upcoming Elder Scrolls 6. Keep in mind, there's been no actual screenshots of Elder Scrolls 6. There's been really nothing other than that initial teaser trailer from years back. You know, we're getting more stuff on Starfield now. So this is fairly recent. Speaking with GQ about Bethesda's upcoming sci-fi role-playing game, Starfield, Howard was asked what he wants to achieve with Elder Scrolls 6. He answered, quote, "It's like I don't want to answer, but I want to be polite. I will say that we want it to fill that role of the ultimate fantasy world simulator. And there are different ways to accomplish that given the time that has passed," he added. That is a questionable statement in my book. That could mean just about anything. Let me read that again. And there are different ways to accomplish that given the time that has passed. So, that to me says we want to focus on the modern audience. We want the modern audience's opinion. We want the modern audience's money. We want their attention. That could be bad. I don't think a lot of people have hope for Elder Scrolls 6, and it'll all depend on how Starfield does, but it's not sounding good based on this. It's likely a lot more time will pass before gamers get to explore the world of Elder Scrolls 6. During the FTC versus Microsoft trial, Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer said, "With Elder Scrolls 6, it's so far out, it's hard to understand what platforms it will even be at this point. It's the same team that's finishing Starfield, which comes out this September." He then stated, "So we're talking about a game that's like 5+ years away." The game was first announced by Bethesda back in 2018. Oh my gosh. I knew it was a long time, but that is it. I mean, this is one that people have been just clamoring for. And then they released that teaser just to say, yes, we're going to make it. And they didn't even start work on it. Or at least as far as I know, they didn't. Maybe they did in a little bit. As you can see below, the teaser trailer was an aerial shot of mountainous terrain accompanied by music that sounds similar to the Uruk-hai theme in Lord of the Rings films by Peter Jackson. When asked by GQ if he regrets announcing the game when he did, Howard stated, "I have asked myself that a lot. I don't know. I probably would have announced it more casually." I mean, he announced it pretty tongue-in-cheek, sort of jokingly. Like, it almost felt like a joke because so many people were like, "Where's Elder Scrolls 6? Give us Elder Scrolls 6." However, he previously told IGN back in 2019, "The gap in between is going to be long. It already is. On one hand, I think it's good to miss things. I think that makes people come to it with really, really fresh eyes. And I think when they eventually see the game and what we have in mind, they'll understand the gap more in terms of technology and what we want it to do." So, it definitely comes across as Todd Howard just trying to placate people who have endless questions about Elder Scrolls 6, even though the game is likely, as Phil Spencer said, probably 5 or 6 years out. It's not going to release anytime soon. And Starfield's going to take up the majority of their development time because they're going to probably keep adding to it and updating it and all of that. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not terribly excited about Starfield. Everything I saw about Starfield did not compel me. It just looked like another Bethesda buggy mess. I'm not excited for Starfield in the slightest. I don't have a lot of excitement for Starfield. Not like something like a new Elder Scrolls or a new Fallout. I was excited for Fallout 4, and then, Fallout 4 happened, and, well, yeah. In an interview with Lex Friedman back in November 2022, Howard shared his desire that the game would be coming out soon. He said, "I wish it was soon. We want them out too, and I wish they didn't take as long as they did, but they do." He then added, "Look, if I could go back in time, it would never have been my plan to wait as long as it's taken for it." They really should have prioritized it beyond anything else they ever did. Elder Scrolls is Bethesda's flagship franchise at this point. It is their original franchise. And then Starfield is a new original franchise, but Elder Scrolls is primarily that. And then their secondary flagship series is Fallout, and then now they've got Starfield. So they've got 3 series under their belt that they're working on, and they're all open world focused and major. So, I mean, Elder Scrolls is going to take years. It could take 5 to 10 years easily. And knowing Bethesda, it'll probably take about that amount of time. Probably more towards 10 than 5, unless they really rush it and they reuse assets from Starfield. It's most likely going to use the same engine as Starfield, but whatever their engine is, the one that people keep complaining is dated. In that same interview with Friedman, Howard also revealed how far they had gotten into development for Elder Scrolls 6 while discussing how they make their games. Quote, "So take Elder Scrolls," I don't know why I'm saying quote, I guess it's just a habit of mine, so pay no attention to me. "So take Elder Scrolls 6. We figured out where it's set, what's the tone, what are the big features. We discussed the beginning of the game, which we had for a very long time. Then I like to do music, so we've already done a take on the music for Elder Scrolls 6. As for why Bethesda chose to announce Elder Scrolls 6 back in 2018, despite making it clear that they would be prioritizing development resources on Starfield, Bethesda's VP of Marketing, Pete Hines, explained to FZ.se, So it was just in conversations with him and folks on my team to say, look, why don't we consider putting out a little bit more of a roadmap for the studio that explains to folks, my voice is getting hoarse, man. Here's what we're doing. Yes, we're making this game called Starfield, and here's what it is, and yes, we're going to make Elder Scrolls 6, but we have these older 2 games to develop and make first. It's just so that folks have a better sense of where we are and where we're headed. I just feel like that was important. And then I completely forgot about Fallout 76. That's how bad that game was. What a train wreck. What are you expecting from Elder Scrolls 6? Nothing good. Nothing good. Look, it is way too early to even begin to speculate on what Elder Scrolls 6 will be, what it will turn out to be, how it will turn out to be. I don't have a whole lot of faith in Bethesda anymore. And I don't think that I think Starfield is going to get all of the critical acclaim and praise and all of the things that you would expect with a Bethesda release. But then I think it's going to send into people that this is a Bethesda game in 2023. It's going to be buggy. It's going to have issues. Fallout 76 pretty much, for a lot of people, made them swear off Bethesda pretty much forever. I know that sounds a little extreme, but that's what a lot of people have resorted to doing because Bethesda has just been so terrible. This is a AAA studio. They're now owned by Microsoft, and Fallout 76 was so disastrously bad at every possible aspect. Felt like every other day there was a controversy. It was insane. There's not a whole lot of confidence writing in the studio anymore. Gone are the days where you could get a game like Skyrim, which had broken features, but the community was able to mod it so great, and it had such a great feel to it, and it's still great to play to this day. I mean, I think Elder Scrolls V was where they peaked. In all honesty, I think that that's the best that they're going to be able to do. So, it's just interesting that Todd is talking about it, and I think he's talking about it because Starfield is almost out, and they're trying to drum up interest for that, and they're also trying to drum up interest in Bethesda again, because they really haven't done much of anything, and in the meantime, we're not hearing anything about anything Fallout related. All of their resources are on Starfield and then on Elder Scrolls 6, so see you for Fallout 5 in 2048 or whenever. I don't know. I'll probably not care by that point. So let's see, what else do we have for articles? Alice Cooper calls so-called transgender ideology aimed at children wrong, says they're confusing kids. Well, I agree with that statement as an overall. Fantasia Film Festival 2023 New Life Review, Changing the End of the World. Okay, don't know what that is, don't really care. Michael Mann reveals he's spoken to Adam Driver extensively to play Neil McCauley in Heat 2. Two scoopers claim Margot Robbie will return as Harley Quinn in James Gunn's DCU. Oh, that... Can we drop Harley Quinn as a character, please? Especially the Margot Robbie. Don't necessarily cast the actors that fit. Okay, so it looks like we're in the green again. I don't know what happened there. I apologize, folks. That's very strange. I think it was because there was a video that popped up. But my original point was, Hollywood does not like to cast the right actors for the roles in every case. That sometimes they just go with the biggest names. The only instance I can think of where this worked out recently was Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. That felt right. That felt accurate. That felt like they were looking at the comics, they were reading the comics, and they said, this guy can pull it off. They don't do that anymore. They just go, let's get an approximation of what we see. And that's how they ended up with Margot Robbie. And that's how they ended up with Kaylee Cuoco voicing her in the Harley Quinn series. And I'm just tired of Harley Quinn. I'm tired of anti-heroes. I think the anti-hero trope is massively overused. It's massively overutilized. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm just completely done with the whole anti-hero thing. I don't like it. Because there was a time when the anti-hero was compelling, was fun. Sometimes they would team up with the heroes. That'd be a special thing. They do it all the freaking time now. They do it all the time, and it just gets tiring. I want more focus on the actual heroes and heroics. If you're going to make a Batman movie, focus on Batman and Robin and Nightwing and Batgirl and Red Hood and the whole Bat family. Don't focus on the anti-heroes. I guess Jason Todd's technically an anti-hero, I guess. He's the closest thing DC has to Deadpool. At least that seems to be how they've been treating him based on what I've seen. But I don't really pay that much attention to DC Comics anymore. And speaking of comics, I wonder, do they have any comic book news or reviews? Boom Studios expands on Keanu Reeves' Berserker by tapping the Batman Part 2 co-writer for Berserker Fallen Empire. Mark Miller claims comic book industry is the worst state it's ever been, suggests comic book legends return to DC and Marvel in order to save it. Okay, this will be interesting to talk about. This may be our last thing because I'm starting to get technical hiccups and issues, and so I don't think I can even watch videos, I'll be honest, because those videos pop up and then I get all sorts of dropped frames. So, yeah, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. So, Mark Miller claims comic book industry is in the worst state it's ever been, suggests comic book legends return to DC and Marvel in order to save it. I couldn't agree more with that statement, honestly. The best things that Marvel and DC do currently is when they re-release older stuff, which is good for me because I got into comics a couple of years ago, so there's still a lot of stuff I haven't read. I got in at pretty much at the start of the New 52, and while I liked elements of the New 52, it was very much hated by legacy comic fans, except for some of my friends. It was, oh boy, it was lambasted as just awful. And coming in as a fresh person who had only been exposed to most of these heroes through television and film media, I didn't really feel the same way. I thought the New 52 was pretty great and compelling, but I guess there were a lot of bomb books. I will say the Superman main series that was done during New 52 wasn't very great. I have the first volume of that. The Action Comics was a lot better, but Superman wasn't great. Comic book writer Mark Miller, known for his Superman Red Son, he did Superman Red Son, that's a good one. Civil War, also great. Wanted and Kingsman stories. Recently posted, all pretty great books. I haven't read all of them, but I've seen a lot of their adaptions, and those are good stories, really good stories. Recently posited that the comic book industry is in the worst state it's ever been, and proceeded to share his idea on how to save it. During an appearance on the Thinking Critical channel, it's a great channel, by the way, you should subscribe to Thinking Critical. He does tremendous comic book coverage. I mean, way better than my Cool Comics series. He does an absolute fantastic job. I love Thinking Critical. Miller confirmed, I'm just going to say M confirmed his previously announced return to DC for a Superman story, and then quickly segued into posting his idea that at least 20 comic book legends should return to both DC and Marvel to do, at minimum, 2-year runs in order to save the comic book industry. I couldn't agree more with that. Guys like EVS and Charles Dixon and Todd McFarlane and Frank Miller and a lot of these guys who are just no longer there, they need to come back for short series runs. They can do fantastic work, and they can mentor these younger crowds, but let's see what he has to say. M stated, there's something weird going on right now where I really feel like guys like me and guys who've worked in the industry for a while and been very lucky, had a lot of big books and everything, we've got to man the stations. I think everybody's got to come in and do a couple of projects and find an artist who's as good as you can possibly get and just do some killer run on something. As for why he believes these comic book legends should return, he explained it's because the industry is in the worst state it's ever been. And I couldn't agree more with that statement. It is absolutely bad. It is really terrible. He said, the retailers, they're struggling out there. They're dying. I went to my local comic book store to pick up some boxes, and it was dang near empty. I think one person had left by the time I came in, but it was pretty much empty. I was browsing the entire store by myself, and that was sad. And I've got a really nice comic book store, like a really good one. They're dying. All my friends and retailers are saying they've never known it as hard as this. And it's really sad. It's really sad. There's a lot of good comic shop owners out there, a whole bunch of them. Miller then further elaborated on his idea to bring comic book legends back, and I was like, okay, let's get Captain Oliver Copiel and Pepe L or whatever, and we can go and do a Captain America and a Wolverine run or something. Everybody's got to come back and 2 runs, and if 20 big-name writers and 20 big-name artists do that, you've got an amazing couple of years of comic books. Exactly. I would say the same thing for the film industry. Get classic directors and writers back, to helm just a couple of movies just to generate that interest again. Because they have so quickly transitioned to new generations of writers and artists who are not very good at what they do, and they're so steeped in ideology that they're turning off general audiences. We need to get something like that going again. You want to see some excitement at Marvel and DC again. I think DC has a little bit of hope. I guess they've had some standout books in the past couple of years, some ones that are better, but Marvel is just completely in the ground. I mean, Marvel, as far as their comics are concerned, it's just, Disney just doesn't care whatsoever. They really don't care, and they're not sending their best when it comes to writing those books and doing art for those books. Some of the art is just, and I'm not an artist, but as somebody who appreciates comic book art, some of the modern comic art is just bad. Reacting to Miller's proposition, L. Carter, the proprietor of Fantastic Comics in Berkeley, California, suggested that either Mark Millar or Todd McFarlane write Spider-Man, explaining, because that's the book it needs to be. Of course, everybody knows that. And he's right. The latest runs of Spider-Man have been very much criticized from what I've seen. I haven't paid too much attention. And then there's some covers for some of his books, Kings of Spies. That looks cool. By Image. And then Nemesis in Image, which I've never heard of. Both of those look cool, and they're done by Image. M then went on to share his view that Marvel and DC need to do well in order to drive creator-owned success. Quote, in reality, in the last 10 years, there hasn't been any real big blow-up success in the creator-owned world. Saga was probably the last one that went crazy. Well, here's the thing. Is he ignoring the Rippaverse? Is he ignoring all caps, even Ethan Van Sciver's all caps comics and Cyberfrog? I mean, there's been standout successes, but maybe not the numbers that DC and Marvel have done, so I don't know if he's ignoring that. Maybe he'll elaborate on that further later. Saga was probably the last one that went crazy. Things have done, they've done nicely, but Saga was the last time there was a phenomenon. I think Walking Dead prior to that. So, there's been a few. It just seems like he's completely ignoring the Rippaverse and ISOM. And they're already doing not only another ISOM, but they're doing another book as well. So, but the real success comes from the industry, and I'm not talking about as individuals, as creators. It comes from the industry when Marvel and DC are doing well, particularly Marvel. And again, people hate to hear this because you're making money from the man, you're showing it up a corporation. But the honest truth is that creator-owned growth comes from Marvel and DC doing well. I don't agree with that statement at all. I don't. We don't need Marvel and DC anymore in their current state. Their current state is the whole reason why people are lamenting comics right now. One of my friends who introduced me to reading comics is no longer reading comics. He had been pretty much, at that point, a lifelong comics fan, and he no longer reads comics because they're all woke garbage to him. He won't read them, he won't touch them, because they're just not interesting. From there, M returned to his idea to save the industry and noted that the current output from the companies are just not good. Everybody needs to go back and do 1 or 2 projects, I think, and I'm going to try and get my friends to do this over the next couple of years, try and get some excitement going back at the companies. Good luck if they'll let you. Good luck if they'll let you. I don't think they will. I don't think they're going to let Ethan Van Sciver back. I don't think they're going to let Frank Miller back. I don't think they're going to let Chuck Dixon back. I think they're going to keep the legends away from the industry because they're all about their agenda. I don't think he really understands the core problem here. I really don't. And I think he's misattributing the problem. The problem is you've got a group of young writers and artists who don't care about these heroes. They don't care about the stories. They don't care about the legacies. They're not writing these characters and illustrating these characters in ways that honor them. They're writing them and illustrating them in ways that just perpetuate their ideology. That's all they care about. Obviously, there's some great books. There's 2 or 3 good books, I think, at DC right now. But you need 20 good books. There needs to be 20 great books, he stated. And he's right. M continued, and you can go back and look at all of these other periods in history. Look at the 90s, look at the 80s, look at the 60s. There were so many books that I couldn't afford to buy. All the books I wanted to buy, and nobody's in that position anymore. Everybody's like, yeah, there's only 2 things worth checking out. Barely that. I wouldn't fully agree with him saying there's 1 or 2 good books at DC or Marvel. I think most of it is just straight up garbage that I've seen. Most of the single story graphic novels, I mean, we got Gotham High, we got I Am Not Starfire, we almost got The New Warriors by Kibblesmith, which everybody memed on to the point where Marvel completely pulled the plug, which was surprising. They didn't stand by him on that at all. They just tossed him out the door, rightfully so, because oh man, The New Warriors looked abominably terrible. I mean, people were just eviscerating that book before it even went to print. Snowflake and Safe Space, my gosh. If you're not familiar with that controversy, go ahead and look it up. It was terrible. I want to see people in that position again when they're holding $20 in their hand, but they need $60 for the number of good comics that come out that week, he detailed. M is not the only one to suggest that the comic book industry is struggling. Rod Lamberti, or Rob L., the owner of Rodman Comics in Ankeny, Iowa, revealed in a blog post at Bleeding Cool that his new comic sales are declining. He stated, "New comic sales here in the comic store are increasingly slowing down. The recent death of Miss Marvel and Amazing Spider-Man was not a big deal at the store. The latest issues of Iron Man and Hulk are low sellers. The characters have fans, but few are interested in their latest adventures." Yep. They've been expressing this for a long time, but Marvel and DC are just run by idiots. They're not run by smart people. They're run by woke people who kicked out all of the legacy creators. They kicked out EBS because of his political view. I believe somebody got him fired at DC and blacklisted at Marvel or something like that. And he loves those companies, but he'll never work there again as long as the current brass is in charge. Which is funny because he knows Jeff Johns and Jim Lee, and you would think that they would let him come back to do some projects, but I mean, hey, he's doing fine with Cyberfrog, so I don't really see the problem. DC Studios CEO James Gunn also informed Michael Rosenbaum earlier this year, "I started out, I wanted to write comic books when I was younger. If I was writing comic books today, I'd probably be unhappy because so few people are reading comic books. And they're not reading comic books because they can just go and see the movies, or they can watch the cartoons. They don't even know where their local comic book shops are. The companies are not advertising their books. That's the other problem people aren't talking about. It's not just that they're woke and they're into DEI. It's because they're not putting out the information for people to be able to find their comics. People have to go to their websites or go to apps, but they need to be going to the shops too. And they're not going to the shops. My local comic book shop, the last time I went there, was empty, and it's a massive store. It's a pretty big store. It's a nice store. It's in an old building, but it's a nice space. And I believe there are one or two other small comic book shops near me as well, which I should probably check out at some point. But they're not doing well. They're holding on by a thread. It's the only business I know that it's doing so terribly, and yet they're still in business. They're still hanging on. And you feel bad for these shop owners because they're passionate about the heroes. They're passionate about the books, and they want to just cultivate communities around comics, and they want to generate sales, but they're not able to do it because all these books are terrible. They're awful. As far as other interests to try and rejuvenate interest in DC and Marvel, Jim Lee believes James Gunn can do that. He explained to The Hollywood Reporter, "It's amazing to have partners in Peter and James, particularly James. He was a comics fan growing up and knows our mythology inside and out. I question that." Okay, well, maybe James, but I don't... No, wait a second. Peter and James. He means James Gunn. Yeah, I question that with James Gunn. I really do. And having that kind of ally in the live action space allows us to really leverage what he is doing and allow us to market and sell comic books to new readers. How did that work out for the MCU the first time around? There was no significant increase in comic sales outside of that initial, leading up to the first Avengers run of films. That's all I remember. Ever since then, there hasn't been a massive stay of readers. Because it's just terrible. These aren't writing the same type of stuff that you're seeing in those early Marvel movies. They're writing crap. So many of these people just don't understand what's going on. Quote, "These are people who are interested in his movies, his TV shows, and if they want to take a deep dive into these characters, he directs them to the comic books," he added. When does he do that? I haven't seen him do that. What do you make of, I'm going to try to pronounce it here, Millar's idea of saving the comic book industry? I think he's half right, but I think he's half wrong. I think his reasoning for why comics are failing just misses the mark. And maybe he's fully aware of it. Maybe he was just trying to be more cordial on Thinking Critical's channel. But, I mean, if you've been paying attention, you know that the quality of writing and art has just gone down the tubes because you've got a younger generation who is using these heroes and these stories as vehicles for nothing more than ideology. They're not telling the stories that people want to hear. They're telling stories based on their own circle, their own sphere of influence, their own life experiences. They're making it all about them. One of the first rules of writing something like that is you don't make it about you. You stay faithful to how that character has been established, how that world has been established, and you stay in line with that to the best of your abilities. Then you can start adding and taking away and mixing around certain elements, but you got to keep the core elements there, and they've discarded most of them. So comics are doing terrible, and the hope is in stuff like Comicsgate, the Iron Age. All of these independent movements for comic books are doing fantastic, and I can't believe he really didn't mention that. You know, it's kind of baffling that he didn't, because again, ISOM, it made over $1 million. It was able to raise that money, and they were able to raise more for ISOM 2, and people have been happy with it. I haven't gotten either book. I'm waiting to see if Eric July is able to distribute to like Barnes and Noble or something, or to Amazon, and see if he can get, you know, these full print runs going. You know, I didn't get in on the crowdfunding side of things, even though I should have, but and he's a guy who understands comic books. Eric July understands comics, and he's doing it right. He's building a comic company from the ground up like a lot of these people are, and he's finding tremendous success. And the fact that DC and Marvel just completely ignore it is, I mean, it's baffling. And then you got Razor Fist coming out with Ghost of the Badlands, which I'm very interested in because I love Razor Fist stuff. I've been curious about Cyberfrog for a while, but I've been putting it off until I don't know if it was Cyberfrog or if it was some independent creator said that they had done a deal with something like Barnes and Noble, and so that's what I'm looking for, and to see maybe if my local comic shops sell it. I think that's where these comic shops are going to succeed, is if they start selling more independent comics. And when I checked my local comic store beforehand, they really weren't selling a whole lot of independent comics. They were just selling the mainline stuff and a lot of the old collectible stuff. They weren't selling a lot of the new indie comics either, because they didn't have space, they didn't want them, whatever the reasoning is. But I mean, Marvel and DC are not in a good place. They're absolutely not in a good place, and I think that if they want to succeed in the future, I think Mark Millar, or Mark M, because I don't want to keep trying to butcher his name, I think his idea of bringing back the legends is actually absolutely a great idea. But the thing he's ignoring is that a lot of these legends are blacklisted. A lot of these legends are not allowed back at Marvel or DC, and they won't let them back in because they have made statements and things that are controversial, and they've got all of these weirdo woke kids who throw a tantrum every time they say something. EVS was just recently kicked off of Twitter for some form of hate speech, which makes no sense to anybody. You know, he violated some sort of hate speech rules according to somebody, but nobody can give an example of what that was. So he's completely in the dark there, although I think he had a backup account that he used. But, I mean, it's just a mess, because this is one of the worst examples of the culture war just dominating and destroying an industry, because it's completely one-sided. And if you're not on that side, you're not welcome within those corporations, because they're run by one side. They're not run by neutral parties. They're run by one side. I'm disappointed in Jeff Johns and Jim Lee for not putting an end to this nonsense. I don't know if it's just because they agree with it or what the situation is, but both of them should know better. They should be turning this industry around. They should be saying, no, we need to bring in people based on merit, not based on skin color, not based on sexuality, not based on any of these other things. It should be based purely on the merit of the artists and the writers and what they're able to come together to do. It's not based on that anymore, clearly. That's how we get books like I Am Starfire and Gotham High, and it's like there's no quality control at DC and Marvel anymore. So anyways, folks, it has been a blast. I've been going for almost an hour and 30 minutes, at least an hour. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot left to talk about in this one. We've gone over most of these articles. We talked about Charles Martinet no longer being the voice of Mario. There's not a whole lot of subjects left, but thank you very much for coming to this very first edition of Super Koopa TV at Night. Plans for the future, this is going to be every Thursday night that I can at 7 o'clock. I'm going to try to go for an hour, if not more, but this is very grating on my voice. I've got to adjust my background a little bit so that way you can see the logo a lot better. I did a very poor job of that. But this was a whole lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. There wasn't a lot of traffic tonight. I completely understand that. This one was probably last minute for a lot of people. But this will be available in the form of the podcast playlist and its own playlist. So if you guys missed it and you want to go back and watch it, feel free to absolutely do so. I'm sorry about the dropped frames and connection earlier. It's kind of unavoidable because of my own hardware. It's going to struggle from time to time. So until I can get a better hardware and better setup, it's just going to have to be what I deal with. So thank you very much for coming out, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys next time. This has been Super Koopa TV. God bless.